A survivor story is meant to inspire us. We learn of their tragedy, self-doubt, and eventual triumph. But what about the story of an individual who has survived by cheating death 3 times? Well, RJ Wyndham is that person. His story is not only motivational, it is inspirational. Through the Patient to Patient podcast, you will be captivated and taken on a real survival adventure, meeting global experts and cancer survivors just like you, where no topic is out of bounds. Now, your host, RJ Wyndham.
Welcome to Season 1, Episode 6 of the Patient to Patient podcast. I'm your host, RJ Wyndham, and for today's adventure, you and I are going to travel to the United States to meet out-of-the-box thinker, Shari James. But first, we have to fire up the virtual rocket and head to the United States. So Shari James, welcome to the Patient to Patient podcast.
Thank you, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, let's get started because I'm afraid we have so much to talk about in so little time. Why don't we introduce you to everyone? I went over your background, but why don't you just tell everyone that's at home watching and listening a little bit about what your practice is and how you help men in general.
Okay. Right. So I'm a registered nurse. So I do have that Western education. And when I was nursing, I did post-op in heart and diabetic. So I have a lot of knowledge on, obviously, the circulatory system. And then when I was figuring out how to heal erectile dysfunction, I also incorporated Tantra. So there's an energetic piece to the work, and then also the understanding of the 5 elements of Chinese medicine.
Oh, excellent.
So what I did is I put that all together into a 3-month program, and I help men heal erectile dysfunction without pills. I help them get off of pills. And in some cases, I help them get the pills to work. So it's kind of all, I'm not against pills.
Right.
It's just, for me, it's a last resort and not a first choice, right? So if I'm getting to someone who's 85, I'm like, let's just get these suckers to work.
Exactly. Now, here's what I find interesting, and I really love that approach. Here in North America, the first thing that you're prescribed as a patient is pills right away. Yeah. And you're told, now they're probably going to work, but just keep taking them anyway. Now, when you get to different continents, especially Oceania and specifically Australia, they skip pills altogether and they go into a trimix injection.
Oh, no.
I know. So
my heart literally just sunk inside my chest.
So I know. So what we want to do right now is kind of do a reboot on our mindset. And so that's why I was really looking forward to speaking.
I like to have goosebumps.
Yeah, I know. I do too.
Like my heart just broke. Okay.
I know. So here's what happens. We go through everything as a patient, and everyone watching and listening understands completely that leading up to either your surgery or whatever procedure that you have, whether it's radiation, prostatectomy, or various other methods, that is where your focus is, where everything falls down, and where I know you're going to be able to help everyone today is what happens post-procedure. You're pretty much just left all alone in many cases, and there's no clear path or clear direction. So why don't you tell us how you come in and fill this void, because there's a huge void there, and I know that you're filling it.
Yeah, I mean, I know you and I have talked prior to this, and I told you that I've been helping a gentleman for the past 6 months, pre-op, during op, and now post-op. So there's been an arc of care and support that he's needed, right? So at some points, it's been mostly emotional, or saying, you know what, it's like, or just making him feel okay. Like it's normal to lose your sex drive during this process, right? Your body's using all of that energy for healing. It really doesn't want to use that to have sex right now. Sexual energy is an excess energy. So if your body is using that for something else, it's like, no, it does not want to be, physical.
No, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of depending on, where I'm meeting someone in the arc of all of this, it's got to be customized. It's like, yes, I have this 3-month program, but that's not even starting to actually, no, that got put on the back burner because I found more cancer, with this particular gentleman. So who knows when we're going to get, right? Like who knows when we're going to get to that. So it just really depends because there is this kind of odd blessing depending on which procedure you get, where you're able to have the most amazing orgasms. Mm-hmm. You're not ejaculating, I'm sure, as your audience would know, but
the gland has been removed in most cases.
But energetically, you can still have big, powerful, full body orgasms. Of course, that has to be learned. That is something I teach as well. So that turns out to be amazing. Like guys are so happy about that because it's not just the little sneeze because so now no fluids coming out and it's not even localized. So it's full body. So, maybe I'm hitting someone in that stage.
No, I mean, I think that's so important. And that's a topic that's really not addressed. It's sort of the elephant in the room, if you will. And so why don't you take us a little deeper into that? So you talked about Western medicine and I guess East meets West in your philosophy, correct?
Definitely.
Why don't you take us there and tell everyone how that process sort of, I don't want to say fill the gaps, but I guess fill the gaps.
Sure. So I think whether you have straight ED without having any prostate procedures or cancers or even being on any pills to reduce prostate inflammation, that part of it I really treat the same. Because from my perspective, which is, 15, 16 years of doing this, I would say that the number one cause of erectile dysfunction comes from an overstimulated nervous system. Right. And that's why a lot of times the pills don't work because they can't and they are not addressing that.
I know. And that's a topic that, again, so many people go through. So the philosophy here in North America, since we're doing 7 continents, if you will, is that, take the medication, as I said earlier, and it's not going to work. But hopefully over time, the nerves would be stimulated. So what do you say to that? And what approach would you use that would be completely different?
The first thing I want to do is agree that after a prostate procedure, it's okay. And I would even advocate taking a pill. As low dose as possible. Yeah. The thing about me is I'm not just all Eastern. Like when I see, oh, this makes sense here, this makes sense here, right? It's for the welfare and the well-being of the person. So I think, right after getting that stimulation of the pill is not a bad thing. Where things
so a dose maybe 20 milligrams or something like that.
It really depends on here's another battle I have in my job. It really depends on the doctor, their belief system, their education. Some may give you 20. I'm just such a huge fan of starting out with the smallest possible increment. It's a technique I call chipping, where maybe you get a 20 and you just start to take a little chip off of it. So I'm like very conservative and moderate with any kind of Western medicine. So initially, I think that I do advocate that.
Okay, good.
Then, once some blood starts flowing, like in the case of this patient, because I've been with him for so long, I'm like, let's skip the pills. like, let me teach you these techniques. Like, let's do something different here. So he did, and it's working.
Well, what would the techniques be?
Okay, so what I've done is I've created my own type of breath work that we take the sexual energy and move it up to the heart and then back down to the penis.
Okay. And this is through breathing.
Yeah, it's a particular type of breath work that I've created. And you don't even get to that breath work until week 8 of my 3-month program, because first there's so many other things we have to address. Because for I call it the hard-on cascade. Nervous.
Well, you can coin the phrase. It's yours, correct?
Yeah, I know. See if anyone steals it. So like first you need to be relaxed so that your blood vessels can open, and then you need to be excited, and then let's call the relaxation piece the orgasm. However you're going to be having it, depending on what procedure you've had. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I really do is work with people on their nervous system. And I do something unique where I guarantee results, which is probably insanity on my part. However, what it's forced me to do is to continue to learn and grow. And I think of it like kind of like a rock star that's been singing the same song for 20 years.
Right.
I don't know how they keep that fresh, but like for me, when I did the guarantee, it made everything fresh for me again.
Oh, excellent.
And I started learning more. So I'm like, okay, we're not only dealing with the sympathetic and parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. Now I'm seeing we need to start doing some the vagal branch. So there's like 3 different branches of the nervous system that are being addressed initially, because we want to follow that hard-on cascade where it's relax and open, and then we stimulate, because the breathing that I created is very stimulating to the nervous system.
Okay. All right, very good. So to circle back to the patient that you were talking about. So I'm assuming that the individual had a prostatectomy surgery, correct? Okay, excellent. So then nothing seemed to work. Pills, pumps, pelvic floors, none of that worked, correct?
He just worked with me, and we didn't even go that route with.
Oh, so he just skipped that altogether. Okay, fascinating.
Yeah,
no, that's perfect. So let's pick up.
And I am a fan of pelvic floor pre-op, like all that too as well. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And so let's pick up, if you don't mind, where he came to you and said, "I need your help."
Right. It was really when this whole process first started for him, because he wasn't getting any emotional support and he really wasn't getting any answers. And he had been already researching me and maybe looking at some of my different case studies that, people can access, not publicly, but through me. And so when he started this whole thing, he's like, I want to work with you. Like, I want to have support through this process, because it's different when it's from a family member or a girlfriend or a wife. It's just, it's different.
It is. It's hard. It's hard even talking to your partner at times.
Yeah.
This. So I'm definitely in agreement there, of course.
Yeah, because there was a lot of tears shed, and maybe that's one thing I wanted to mention is, it's, you're losing a body part, and it's okay to mourn that.
Absolutely. And there's such a mental aspect to it that is not addressed, in my opinion, from my experience as well. And then even in the news recently this year, 2 well-known individuals, one a famous tennis player, John Lloyd, when he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and he went to a surgeon and said, "If you can't guarantee me that I'll have 100% sexual function, when the surgery's over, then forget the whole surgery, sew me up, whatever happens, happens, type of situation. And then Andrew Lloyd Webber, in his memoir, one of the things he talked about is the, I call it the Herculean task of prostate cancer recovery. And he even at times in his memoir said that he contemplated suicide, So there's a specific mental aspect, and I know you're hands-on and, experience this on a regular basis, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't work with anyone in person, but I do work over.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm.
Yeah, I know.
I'm hands-on virtually for sure. Well,
Right.
sometimes you just need okay, so I have perspective, right? So I've been helping guys with this.
Right.
Different procedures, different aspects, even just, Peyronie's after radiation. So I have a perspective that says, I've had success, I've seen success. So sometimes I think even having me to go look, I've got you. I've got you on this. I've seen success. Even that's helpful to have someone have
it is. I mean, just to acknowledge that and understand that there's someone on the other side, that's giving you a leg out, that's reaching out, with a hand and saying, I got this. And sometimes that's half the battle.
Yeah, because holding a strong, confident space for a man, it's almost like I love control, right? Because in order to take control, you have to lose control. Controls are really a really interesting thing to play with. And so when you have, I think, someone who's I'm holding space, I've got you, I'm in control of this, and then it allows the man to actually feel out of control. Yeah. To start to, get into that vulnerability, and, tears do help heal.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's part of the process.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a little deeper into your programming and your practice. So the patient that you're working with now, did they have any other symptoms or things they wanted to address besides ED?
I mean, yeah, there was some porn usage, going on and things like that. I mean, let me just kind of go into what I feel are the 5 primary causes of ED, because these are the ones that
it's important.
Yeah. So number 1 for me is overstimulated nervous system. The nervous system controls everything in your body, right? So that has to be number 1. A decreased circulatory system. Obviously, that blood flow's got to get down there. Very small little vein, it's got to go down. So we got to get blood flow down there. Mental and emotional blocks are a huge one. Whether it's coming from something of your past or what I find a lot of is men that are being emasculated in their relationship, or they're in a sexless relationship, which is just kind of death to a man in terms of his self-confidence, self-worth.
Right.
So there's a lot, to be honest, a lot of times when I do an assessment on someone, I'm like, oh, well, of course you're having problems. It's so clear why you're having problems. Your body's having a normal response to this external stimuli, right? So half of it is I just get to say, this is normal. I find myself saying that every week. Okay, this is normal.
See that's important, because you don't know what's going on in each individual psyche, what they're thinking about, because each case I know from mine, but each case of the people that I talk to around the globe, it's different. It's a case-by-case situation. Everyone's situation is their situation. So, that's something that I feel that you're addressing.
Over time, it becomes normal, not unique. Over time, there's predictable patterns My assessment is incredibly thorough. So it's like, okay, I can just kind of go through and go, okay, yeah, here's a cause here. Here's a cause here. Here's a cause here.
Right.
Because they're just predictable patterns.
Exactly.
Right?
And I imagine over time, it becomes one of 5 things, 2 of 5 things, or maybe all 5 things, but you can identify what those 5 things are, correct?
Yes. Here's the funny thing, right? My business is so fascinating. It's not a boring business. It's incredibly dynamic. So for some reason this year, half the cases, I couldn't find any known cause.
Wow.
Out of a 50 plus questionnaire and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take your case and I'm going to figure out, I'm going to reverse engineer.
So basically you're a detective.
I call it a dick detective. Yeah.
Now there's a hashtag, right?
Right. I know. And like, I'll take on the case because I'm kind of crazy like that. I'm like, well, because
fascinated.
What can I learn?
Yeah, exactly.
And those guys are all getting results.
See, that's the important thing.
Yeah. And but it's like a different process. It's they still have to go through the program no matter what. Everyone does, whether you're mild, moderate, challenging, post prostate, whatever. It's that part, that piece is the same. It's the coaching, healing, teaching that's different.
Right, exactly. See, just, in our previous conversations and then speaking with you right now, that's how I see you. I see you more as a coach, and someone that mourned the loss of a body part, or someone that's injured needs to identify that you're not going to be able to run as fast as you used to if you hurt your knee, or you're not going to be able to do X, Y, Z like you used to. So let's start at ground zero. Is that correct?
It's like, it's funny because I don't even like the words erectile dysfunction. To me, they're
what do you use instead?
Well, to be public and to get attention, I have to say erectile dysfunction. But for me, it's a firmness problem. And it's coming from an imbalance, or it's never one thing. It's coming from several imbalances, again, whether it be nervous system, circulatory, mental and emotional, something going on in your relationship. It can even be financial sometimes.
It could be, absolutely.
Yeah. Chronic overuse of porn. That's a big one that creates erectile dysfunction. Mismanagement of sexual energy.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, that's a tricky little category.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, it probably sounds more abstract, and it is. So I have to teach men how to listen to their body. When is the ideal time to have sex that's going to stack it in their favor? When is the ideal time to ejaculate? To where your body's like, okay, I've got enough energy built up, like we can spend some.
Right.
And then how do you replenish that sexual energy, right? Because once we're out of like sexual energy, creative energy, life force energy, it's all the same thing. It's what creates babies, right? And on some level, it's what animates our bodies. It's our fuel that we're running on.
Right.
So when you run out of that energy, you're gone. You're no longer here, right? So how do you replenish that, move it around your body, transmute it, move it up into the heart, move it down to the penis?
Exactly. And then see, this is so important. It's such an important topic that you're touching on, because outside of the bubble of prostate cancer survival, however you got there, whatever procedure you had, you're sort of left what I call the aftermath. So you're sitting with your emotions in a hospital bag, little white plastic hospital bag. And then what happens is you have to rebuild yourself mentally, and you have to rebuild yourself physically and emotionally. And see, I think that you're touching on something that, someone else is not touched on in the past. And it's so important, especially where people are being diagnosed with prostate cancer and along. Usually ED will be one of the first symptoms that will kind of, no pun intended, rear its head. But the thing is that you actually have to start at ground zero as a sexual being and rebuild not only yourself, but rebuild your relationship. And see, that's what we're looking at. And that's the tricky thing. And I think that without giving away too much of your course, how would you get someone that's at that state, that basically has tried a lot of different things that we discussed earlier, and now it's at ground zero and it needs to build themselves up? How would you do that through your course?
Ground zero is the best time for me to work with someone. I love observing themes, and what I've observed with my work is I feel like I'm more of a rebirther than anything else. I think erectile dysfunction, I think cancer can be a time of rebirth and renewal.
I agree.
So a lot of what I do, I'm getting someone when they're in transition, and I'm kind of like the midwife in a lot of ways.
And see, I think that they would be at a position where maybe they wouldn't have listened to you 100%, maybe 75%, 80%, who knows what that percentage is. But if you get them at the rebirth, then they're at 100%, and you can take them on that adventure, as I like to call it.
I love that you said that. Yeah. I mean, the first thing I want to say is what's unfortunate about my work is I'm often the last resort. I'm often the emergency room. I'm often the wife is walking out the door.
Right.
So the unfortunate part of my work is the pain point has to be extremely high.
Right.
And I wish that weren't the case, because that requires a lot more engagement from me. It can up the price on things so I kind of wish guys would catch me.
I know. And so that's why I thought it was so important that in our first series 1 of our limited podcast series, that's why I wanted to have you included, because I thought it was important, for people around the globe that are listening, via podcast, watching via YouTube, can hear what you're saying to them. And perhaps it won't be, break glass in case of emergency. Let's contact Shari.
Yeah, it's okay if
you can get something from the beginning.
I would just sometimes I don't need every case to be challenging, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay, so going back to answer your kind of the part 2 of your question is, so let's say they're at the rebirth stage, right? So we've got to look into the mental, emotional, the physical, sometimes the spiritual, the energetic, right? So what are some basic things we know about cancer, depending on where your education and your belief system lies? Being more alkaline, right? So I think of cancer as kind of a dark spot, and so you have to bring more light to it.
That's a good analogy.
Right. So how do we bring more light to this? Through the foods we eat, through breath work, through getting even vitamin D production, which is a good hormone for your immune system, through sunlight. Exactly. Through movement. I will share this. It's been a while since I've done this work. I'm back in LA. But when I decide to do something, I go all in. And I was working with post-prostate guys at one period in LA, and I was doing prostate massage. Or even pre-prostate cancer, when there was a lot of inflammation. And it was shocking to me how you could see a person once and inside it feels like fire. I mean, it's just pure inflammation. And let's say over a number of sessions, all of a sudden you see that come down. And what was I doing? I was simply bringing blood flow, which was bringing oxygenation to the environment. I think the tricky thing about the placement of the prostate is where it is. It's like kind of the garbage dump of the lymph system, right?
Exactly.
Placement's not great. But, I do have this, I don't base it on anything. I do have this hunch that anything that happens down below is somehow protecting your heart, because the body would rather take those organs or those, things out than take your heart out. So that's why I do feel like these things are a wake-up call for a rebirth in terms of how are you breathing? What's your nutrition like? How are you moving? Are you sitting on your butt, in a car in traffic all day for your job? I mean,
right.
Getting more light into the body would be number one.
Okay. So it's like an early alarm system, for our bodies.
Well, yeah, because you're dealing with a pump below and a pump right here. So I think the body would, and it's because the body's inherently intelligent and wise. So if I were the body, I'd take that pump out first before I would take this one out.
Exactly. And that's such a unique approach. And I'm so glad that you just said that. So we're reaching out to, as I said, all 7 continents. And we go on this adventure, virtually. So as we are right now, as I mentioned in the beginning, we are, in North America. But if someone's listening and someone's watching, and they're in another continent, maybe they're in the continent of Africa, or they're in Europe, or they could be in Oceania, in New Zealand, or say Australia, what would be your initial recommendations? Or we'll get into a second of where everyone can find you. But if they're listening and watching, what would you want to say to all the people that are out there searching for something?
Oh my gosh, it's such a huge.
I know. It's just so many people.
I'm gonna go. Since I lived in the West Coast, I'm such a West Coast person, so I'm going to go kind of corny on you, and I'm going to say, love heals. This is the time, right? Because my job as a healer is to love. Love does truly heal. So I would say, I would be asking myself, what are the ways in which I can show my body more love? Right? Through nutrition, through who's around me. Am I doing what I love? Am I moving my body? So just starting with those questions, how do I love my body?
Okay, fantastic. And see, that's important because care differs even from state to state, here in America and
I'm in Florida now.
Province. It's completely different. Yeah. And when we talk to people that are outside of North America, even, everything is, 180 degrees from a mindset of where we are. So that's why it's important that we sort of shrink the globe and make things a little smaller. And so, I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. I was just trying to let, your light shine through so that anyone watching this can go ahead and, be compelled to, look at things maybe somewhat, differently than they approached things in the past. And I don't want you to be a last resort. I think what you're doing is incredible. So if there's any takeaway from today, that would be the one that I wanted to offer. So I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we're definitely going to have you back for sure. So if someone's out there watching and listening, which I know they are, how would they find Shari James?
Well, The easiest way is on my website, and I'm sure you'll have a link floating around somewhere.
I will. I'll have everything in the notes, obviously below.
Yeah, because I share a lot of free resources as well. But what I would do is just simply go to my website, which is www.shari, SHARI JAMES.com. And I would really start there because it's with the work I do, I never know when I could be blocked from social media, kicked off, whatever. It's so conservative as far as even talking about male reproductive health. Right?
Of course.
So just go to my website, and then I have a newsletter. So you'll be getting a lot. Like that's the only way I can directly communicate with people without being maybe Google censors. I still try to be careful, but direct communication with me is the safest bet. And
that newsletter's on your website, correct? They can sign up for that.
It's called the Mailbox, MALE, the Mailbox newsletter.
Okay, perfect. And what about your course? You have a course that
it's a program called the Be Firm Blueprint. So because I kind of have like a membership program where I curate some people I have to work with one-on-one. So I have, it's almost like it is a metaphor of going to a doctor's office and I'm gathering information and I'm suggesting a treatment plan. So the different levels of program and engagement are really based on the assessment. And the assessment is key because I will go through every body system you have.
That's perfect though.
And then I'm like, okay, here's the results. Like, here's what's going on. So I think for me, it's like just you start with the assessment process, because if I were a guy and even for me, for anything, like when clearly, like, oh, there's a cause to this. This didn't just magically happen to me. I see how this happened.
Right. And it may take a little time to discover that or a guide to show it to you, but that's what your program itself.
Yeah. And honestly, they're even welcome to not work with me and to still get the assessment and to take the information and try to heal it themselves. So the main thing when I engage with someone is let's both of us get clear on what the causations are. And if we can't find anything, I'm going to have to be a dick detective. And
there you go. Yeah. All right. Well, fantastic. Well, listen, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate your time. And really, this information was exceptional. So thank you very much. Take care, Shari. Bye now. Well, that's going to do it for us today. Be sure and check out the free resource section at rjwyndham.com. And remember, a journey is something you do on your own, but an adventure is done with loved ones and friends. Until next time, I'm your host, RJ Wyndham.
Thanks for joining the Patient to Patient podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like and subscribe for free. If you know of someone that could benefit from today's show, make sure to share this episode with them.